there's a lot to cover. I'm sure my colleagues will cover. One of the ones I wanted to focus on, which I think has been reported on, but I want to bring it all together, is you go back, February of 2020, an individual was charged with acting as an agent of the Chinese government. They worked with a private investigator and local law enforcement to target an individual to forcibly repatriate individuals to China. Basically go to them and say, we know who you are, we know your family is in China, you need to come back with us or they're going to pay the price. Then in April 23, individuals connected to Chinese intelligence, Chinese efforts, were harassing Chinese nationals in the U.S. They used fake social media accounts to harass and intimidate dissidents. In another similar case, 2 were charged with opening and operating an illegal overseas police station, basically, in order to monitor and intimidate dissidents and those people who were critical of the government, the Communist Party of China. In May of 23, the FBI arrested a man for acting as an agent because between 2018 and 2022, he provided Chinese intelligence officials with information on Boston area individuals and organizations that included photographs of and information about these folks and so forth. From all of this, and these are the ones we know of, there's obviously ongoing investigations and the ones we still don't know about. It's fair to say that the Chinese Communist Party has an active effort inside of the United States to target and harass people to either silence them or to get them to go back to the country by using whatever leverage they can, including threatening their families back in China. That's happening in the United States. It's not happening in Australia or Canada. We're talking about here. That's correct?
Senator, yes, you just read off many of the recent examples of transnational repression activity that the FBI has investigated in the last 3 or 4 years. So
then let's pivot now to the business community, how the tactics they use there. So I'm just going to go through a couple here. I mentioned the NBA one. Obviously, you know, this general manager for an NBA team put out a statement in support of Hong Kong. Chinese companies immediately suspended ties with the team, and the Chinese Basketball Association and the NBA's partnership, you know, terminated for a while. I'm sure that cost them a bunch of money, and they were upset about that. We have the Department of Justice charged the China-based Zoom executive because they were disrupting video meetings that were being hosted by users that were commemorating the '89 Tiananmen Square massacre. And this is the one I think is most interesting because it was out in the open. And in 2021, PRC officials told U.S. business leaders who had business interests in China to speak up and speak out and push the U.S. government to pursue a rational and pragmatic policy towards China. Interpretation there is push what China wants in our policy. But this is the line that really got me, adding, the business community cannot make a fortune in silence. So that's our business community. And then this is the one that I really want to ask you about because I don't think enough attention has been paid to it. This is the National Counterintelligence Security Center noted in their report. It states this, I'm just a quote, leaders at the U.S. state, at the state, local, tribal, and territorial levels risk being manipulated to support hidden PRC agendas. Without, you can cite a specific case, or perhaps you can describe a hypothetical that rings true. What does that mean? So people watching or who will watch this video clip will understand, because I think a lot of people on a city council somewhere are like, why do the Chinese are not going to be targeting me? But they do. Why and how?
So we have examples at the state and local level, for example, of legislators being approached by individuals who ask them to include statements of support for PRC policy. In local and state legislation, we have multiple instances of city relationships in which the agreements between an American city and a Chinese sister city were written in such a way to endorse PRC policy on Taiwan in distinction from actual U.S. policy. There's an example, for example, from 2019, the city of Rockville, Maryland, had a pre-existing relationship with a sister city in China and was contemplating signing a similar arrangement with Taiwan. Diplomats from the PRC embassy here in Washington went to Rockville and said, you can't do that because you've agreed to certain principles in your original agreement with us. And they dangled investment opportunities in front of Rockville and tried to get them not to sign that sister city agreement with Taiwan. Fortunately, the city stood firm and that agreement went forward. So we have multiple examples of them trying to sneak language into documents that are signed or authored by local governments and legislatures that support and endorse PRC policy.
I spoke a little bit about CUSIP. Part of what happens is that the CCP works through multiple different levels of proxy. So I was going through FARA filings for some of our research, and you see this foundation that has this innocuous name, but actually has a bunch of people who are linked to the United Front and the former Hong Kong government heading it. They work through a local PR firm, and those are the contracts that are filed. That local PR firm will reach out to individuals from various different communities to invite them on trips to China. And so you're getting an invitation you don't necessarily, people might not necessarily think. And one of the ways they actually phrase the contract with this the goal of building, enhancing, and retaining positive relationships with key opinion leaders. In this case, it was in African-American communities, students from underserved communities, and African-American media outlets. But they specifically say that the goal is to have those individuals formulate personalized perspectives that can be articulated as, quote, balanced opinions when presented with Sino-U.S. relationship issues. So you have a situation where there's this cultivation of relationships of people who are non-experts and may, reasonably go on this type of trip. But really the purpose behind that is for them to come back and, as Senator Rubio said, to be articulating points of view regarding U.S.-China relations that align with the CCP's goals.
Thank you, Chairman. The National Counterintelligence and Security Center noted that as part of PRC efforts focused on state and local governments, the PRC